Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founder is Johnny Appleseed. Yes, you might be surprised to learn that Johnny Appleseed was in fact a real person. Now, he wasn't born with the last name Appleseed, that's too convenient. Johnny Appleseed was born John Chapman in Massachusetts in October of 1774, right as the First Continental Congress is taking place, and he grows up in revolutionary America, and he is given the all of the attitudes that, hey, this brave new country, well, it needs some growing to do. And as soon as he turns 18, which is during the George Washington administration, he ends up moving west. First, he moves to Pennsylvania, but then he moves to what was then called the Northwest Territory, Ohio, parts of Indiana and Illinois, and Canada. Now, I know what you're saying. How does he move to all these places? Well, he didn't just move there. He walked around there. A lot of what we know as the legend is kind of true. But he didn't just move there to plant apple seeds. He moved there as an itinerant preacher. You see, during the George Washington administration and just after the American Revolution, the Second Great Awakening started to happen, and many new and fascinating religions came about. Now, I'm not going to get too into the discussion on all of the religious ideals of Swedenborgianism, but Johnny Appleseed went around preaching Swedenborgianism, also known as the New Church, which is a bit easier to say, but can be confused with some other churches that called themselves the New Church at the time. Swedenborgianism essentially boils down to the fact that, or the belief rather, that Jesus Christ was not just the Son of God, but was actually God himself. And since God is the essence of goodness, that for one to be good, one could actually be one with God if they were good enough. Now, again, this is an entire religion, and I'm boiling it down to a few sentences, so apologies if I've overstated or oversimplified it, but that is the essence of Swedenborgianism, which is probably my favorite religion to say, Swedenborgianism. And Johnny Appleseed, at this point still John Chapman, walked around as an itinerant preacher, but to make money, what he would do is spread apple seeds, and this is how he gets his nickname, Johnny Appleseed. Now, despite what the picture next to me might tell you and what other people, or I should say, the stories imply, he wasn't just walking around throwing apple seeds everywhere. No, he planted orchards. He would go from farm to farm on the frontier and offer to plant an orchard. And every year he would come back around and prune the trees on that orchard and do other upkeep and help keep the orchard. And in return, the farmers on whose land he planted the orchards would sell the apples every fall, and when Appleseed came back around for his pruning, they would pay him, and that's essentially how he made his money. Now, despite making a pretty good living doing this, Appleseed actually decides to live a life like a pauper. He does, as the story goes, walk around barefoot. And he does, as the story goes, wear a pot on his head. He would take it off to cook some food, presumably wait till it cooled down, put it back on his head, and carry it on his merry way. Now, then as now, this was a bit of a strange way to live your life, and therefore Appleseed became known as kind of a legend in his own time. All the towns he would go through were excited for him to come back, the weirdo with no shoes and a pot on his head, who planted apple orchards and practiced Swedenborgianism. So, Appleseed actually becomes a legend in his own time, and he lives until just after President Polk is elected. So he goes around planting apples for almost the entirety of the first 10 presidential administrations. Now, I know it's strange to call Appleseed a founder, but he was alive during the American founding, and when he went out west to the Northwest Territory, this was a time when people were first going to the Northwest Territory. One of the many reasons the American Revolution was fought is there were certain people like George Washington and Richard Henry Lee and Patrick Henry and people who were also not from Virginia who were claiming land in the Northwest Territory and very excited to settle that land. And that land was being settled. I mean, we've spoken before about Daniel Boone, who just before the Revolutionary War paves the way through the Cumberland Gap to help settle Kentucky. And 30 years later, when Washington's president, there's 30,000 people have moved there, and it can become a state. So his efforts out there planting these orchards and helping people find their way both physically and spiritually, out in the Northwest Territory and in the Ohio Valley region, well, that certainly helped create that part of the United States and was certainly an essential part of the American founding. Now, I know this is a little bit different than most of the founders I speak about on this channel, but it is fun. And John Chapman, as I said, was a real person. It's often confused with a mythical figure, though, as I said, during his own lifetime, Appleseed became larger than life. So that is it for this video. Thank you very much. Make sure you hit like, and if you're new here, subscribe for American Revolution 7 days a week. I do want to note, I did put a link in the description below to a book called Johnny Appleseed, The Man, the Myth, the American Story. And it actually discusses the life of John Chapman. There are thousands of Johnny Appleseed books for children, but not a whole lot for adults. And this one I found really interesting, so I think you might too. So check out the link in the description below if you're interested in that. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with another founder for you tomorrow.